Um, and as for like current campaigns, right now, Sunrise is pushing what we're calling Good Jobs for All. And we're going to have a day of action on April 7th, which is in just about a week, where all
Yeah.
people all over the country are going to be like going to rallies and doing art and distributing pledges to get their communities involved in this fight. So y'all who are watching can join that day of action as an immediate next step.
Boom. I love it. I love that. I wrote that down. April 7th, right? April 7th?
That's
Okay,
right.
cool. That's amazing. I think a lot of people have, you know, a willingness and a desire to help. They just don't really know where to start. So this is awesome that people can go here and at least educate themselves on this stuff going on and whatnot. Also, if you guys don't know, my merch, if you buy any of my merch, 100% of my proceeds go to a charity of your choice. And one of these, I believe, 6 options that we have is the Sunrise Movement. So if you guys like what you're hearing and you want to get some merch, be sure to choose that your money goes to Sunrise Movement. And you can help them out in that way, as well as obviously going to their websites and participating in any way that you can. Let me see. I wrote down questions just in case, and here we are. So I'm going to see if I can find any of those. But again, if anyone's asking questions, then we're going to be looking at those. And if we pick your question, you get a merch, and the money will go straight to Sunrise Movement. So be sure to ask your questions. Let me just look here. Okay.
Maybe one person asked, what should we say when reaching out to the Sunrise Movement? You can just say, hey, I'm a young person. I want to fight climate change. Can I join your hub or can I join your organization? And people will be super friendly. That's how I ended up getting involved. Is I was just, I was, I guess, 14 or 15 at the time. And I just reached out to my local hub and I said, hey, I want to fight climate change. I'm really inspired by what you do. Can I join you? And they said yes. And I made some of the best friends in my life through that. Like I still hang out with the people who I met through that all the time. And it was really wonderful.
That's amazing. I don't know who said that though. I was trying to find their tag. But I was gonna say, I don't see that on here.
Oh, I have Tatum Abigail. Tatum Abigail.
Great. Is that their tag? I just need somebody to make sure. Tatum Abigail. Okay, great. Well, I think my team's watching, so they should be able to get that. Okay, great. Okay, here's a good one. How do you see President Biden either helping make this all a reality or see him standing in the way?
Oh my gosh, such a good question, Joshua. And I ask myself this honestly every day. And I think it's kind of a both and situation. So we have to acknowledge that President Biden is taking historic action on climate change and really taking action the likes of which we haven't seen for 50 years in this country or since President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the New Deal era. If anybody's learning about that in history class, I know I did last year. But we also have to understand that there's a long way to go. And I think one really good example of this is President Biden just released his American Jobs Plan today. And the plan is awesome. It's going to invest, if it passes, $2 trillion in 8 years just for like investing in infrastructure in our country and making our infrastructure more able to protect us during the climate crisis. And that's incredible. It's also going to create a civilian climate corps, which is just like putting people to work fighting climate change. It's exactly what Senator is pushing for. But Biden actually promised while he was campaigning to spend more money than this. He said $2 trillion over 4 years, not 8 years. And I think that really like sums it up, right? Like President Biden is going to give us what we organized for. So our job as young people is to organize for even more ambitious action, even more investment dollars, even more equity and justice solutions. And that's why we've got to organize and get involved in our communities.
Amazing. I think, what age did you get involved real quick at the Sunrise Movement?
So yeah, I think I was like 14 or 15.
Wow.
But I had been doing little environmental actions, like even when I was in middle school.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about this generation is like a genuine desire to go, okay, the world that we've been thrown into is not in a great place, but it doesn't need to stay that way. And I think that with social media, it's such a cool time where everyone's like genuinely trying to be better and they're trying to see how they can make the world better. whether it's physically or like mentally and emotionally. Obviously, this is a physical thing, but the mental emotional is important too. But you know, I just think it's such a cool thing to see like so many people who are interested in this stuff at such an early age. And
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to recognize that you might think like, you know, one ant can't move the entire loaf of bread for the queen, but if all the ants get together, they can do it. But it takes everyone putting this is my best analogy ever. I'm really killing it here like a poet. But for real, it's like I think people need to like I'm excited about how people are starting to recognize their part in all of this and how it's it's we're getting less and less into a time where it's a possibility to sort of stand on the sidelines and not do anything. It's like
Yeah.
this stuff is only going to get worse unless we work together. And I think that generations before us are in this like idea of like this is how it's always been. It's never going to change, but that's just not the reality. The
Yeah.
reality is we can come together and we can make a difference. And so I'm excited to uh, just see this next wave of people that we are at, and like as they all grow up and sort of take over the jobs of the last generation, and just like I just think it's a very special time and a very special generation.
So agree. And also, I think that was a great analogy. Songwriter, poet, same deal. You did great. And yeah, I talk about this all the time where like I think our generation is in such a unique spot living, like growing up in the shadow of the climate crisis, multiple economic recessions, COVID-19 and all
Mm.
that has caused, and so many other, you know, crises of like racial injustice. And I've really found that like organizing has been my outlet for dealing with all that hopelessness and all that crisis and turning it into something that can be better. So you're spot
Mm.
on about generation. And I've also seen a ton of people in the chat asking what age you need to be to get involved. Any age. Sunrise is all people under 35, but there are older people who help out in their own ways too.
Mm.
So there's no like no too young. You can be in middle school. We've got lots of middle schoolers who are involved.
That's so cool. Aubrey Skinner, I think that's her name, said, "How can we keep from feeling discouraged when big corporations are causing the most damage?" Aubrey, you're getting a sweatshirt, but also that's a great question. Um, I have the same thing. I honestly, to me, climate change and so many other movements, they feel so big that it's like, how can I keep any faith that we're going to make any change here? What would you say to people who are thinking that?
Uh, um, I mean, this is honestly why I myself started with Sunrise, is because so much of the messaging we get about the climate crisis is that it's like this huge problem that requires these huge solutions. And then we're told like, oh, if you recycle, it'll get better. And that just doesn't like, it doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah.
So what honestly the biggest thing for me is like being in community with other people who are part of Sunrise, and with other people who care about the climate crisis, especially young people. Because that really brings so much hope, right? Like to have friends who you're working with every day
Mm.
trying to build a better world. I think that's really been it for me. And also gravitating towards like movements and organizations like Sunrise who are not just saying that what we have is bad and that the current situation is bad, but who are also saying, hey, we can build something better. Like there's
Mm.
a better world for out there. We just have to go fight for it and we can win.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also thinking about future generations, because if you look at the trajectory we're on, let alone where we're at, but you look at the trajectory we're on, it's like, you know, if we really, really care about our future children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, the time is now, before it's too late, you know?
Yep.
So that's super important. Somebody said, I think Lindsay Rodell said, "How did you discover this movement and how much has helped?" And I guess I would piggyback on that and ask, like, what are some of the things that Sunrise Movement has done so far that you're really proud of, or that stand out to you as like some of the monumental achievements they've made, or that they're currently making?
Ooh, I love this question. I always love getting to brag. So I think so. I mentioned earlier the American Jobs Plan that President Biden released today, and I said that's 2 trillion over 4 years. That's a ton of money. And while it's not necessarily enough, while there can still be more, one thing that's important to remember is that when President Obama was president of the United States, the amount of money that we were throwing around to invest in infrastructure and address climate change was 90 billion. That's way less than what we've gotten.
Yeah.
it's been like less than 10 years. And that is a direct result of movements like Sunrise and movements full of young people and people of color and working class people fighting for more and fighting for better. So
Mm.
that's like the number one thing is just, I think our elected leaders now, if you look at where they were 10 years ago and then you look at where they are today, they want so much more money to fight the climate crisis. They're recognizing that it connects to economic justice and to racial justice, and they're ready to be ambitious. They're ready to be bold. And that's just a huge leap from where we used to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have a question. If I am to be like, I want to give money to Sunrise Movement, but I don't know who they are. I don't trust them. Where is this money even going? Are they just going to take all my money? Are they just going to like where if people are contributing, where is that money going, and where can they know that they're helping? Or do you? Yeah, I'm
Great.
sure it's all spread out, but I'm just curious if you could help with that.
So it's definitely spread out, but it's a great question. And the first thing I would say is like, if you are a small donor, then you will get reports in your inbox. I think it might be like once a month, once every couple months from our
Mm-hmm.
team at Sunrise who are going to brief you on like, hey, you're a donor. Here's what the movement has done past month or two. Here's what we have coming up for the next month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how you can plug in and how you can get involved and how you can keep track of it. So we really do prioritize transparency in that way. But I would also say, if you're interested in donating, if you're interested in getting involved, follow Sunrise on social media because we post about lots and lots and lots of things that we're doing. And you can track, like how we are distributing money to our hubs and
Mm-hmm.
compensating our organizers for their time that they spend organizing sometimes, buying art supplies to make banners and protest art, or there's lots of things that money goes into, but it's all coming back to direct grassroots organizing.
Amazing. Well, that's so great. Um, okay, I'm just trying to think. I know we got to wrap it up here in a second, but what is something that like I don't know. I guess yeah. What is something that we haven't touched on that you were like, oh, I really want to say this? Is there anything that's like on your heart, on your mind that you're like, you know what, I want to say this right now?
Yeah, I think I can close this off by telling a little bit of a personal story to illustrate why this Good Jobs for All campaign is important.
Mm.
So my grandparents on my mom's side are from rural Appalachia. That's East Tennessee, so it's in the South for people who are from the United States. And they're from a pretty impoverished community where there's not very good infrastructure. People live in poorly insulated shacks. They don't drive very new cars. They have a hard time paying the bills every month. And over the winter, I was staying there in Tennessee, and we had a blackout, which is not normal for that region
Mm-hmm.
because there was a huge snowstorm and all the power lines went down, and people couldn't get out of the valley, which is where my grandparents live, to get gas for their cars, to get food for their table, because they didn't have the infrastructure. The roads weren't clear, and the power lines were down. It wasn't safe. And so the Good Jobs for All campaign that Sunrise is running, the reason we're running it is because it can lift communities like that out of
Mm-hmm.
poverty, out of those conditions by giving them jobs to build the infrastructure, to build the better roads, to build the better power grid, to get the electric vehicles that don't need gas, to make them resilient when disaster strikes like that. And that's why this campaign is so important to me. And I think that's why it's so important to look at why jobs matter when we talk about climate change also. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Amazing. I love that so much. I mean, yeah, that's so great and such a cool like personal story. And I think I think yeah, that's just so great. I'm so happy that you're able to join me and talk about all this stuff. And I hope anybody listening has maybe learned a little bit more about this whole movement and the ways they can be helpful. Hopefully this starts the conversations. Hopefully you go to, is it just sunrisemovement.com? Is that the
Yeah,
.org?
might be sunrisemovement.org, but also, yeah, sunrisemovement.org, but also if you Google Sunrise Movement, it'll be the first thing that pops up.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. So again, if you guys buy my merch, then you can choose Sunrise Movement for your money to go to. I won't get a penny of it, so don't feel like it's all going to Sunrise Movement. There's a few people here that are going to get a sweater, and that's great. But you can also go directly to their website if you want to contribute in any way, and just keep these conversations going. And I think it's important for people to have these conversations, even if they're a little bit difficult, with the people they love who maybe are in denial of certain things or maybe haven't done their proper research. Like, I think it's important that we all recognize that it really takes all of us individually to do our part. And maybe the climate crisis is not your calling, but even so, I think I really appreciate the people who stayed through this whole thing and have tuned in and who are willing to learn and willing to listen. That's really special, and I just want to thank anybody who is willing to take the time out of their day, because I know sometimes people are just like, I don't want to hear that, whatever, it doesn't affect me, but it does, it affects everybody. So anyway, I appreciate everybody who's come on here. I appreciate you so much for joining this live. Um, and yeah, any final words of wisdom? Oh, that's nice shadow going on.
You look like a Visco girl, with the
I know, right? I should post this. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I have no more words of wisdom. Just want to say a huge thank you to you for using your platform for this and for having such a wonderful base of fans. Everyone has been so lovely and
The best.
supportive, and it's just great to get to connect on this and talk about it as young people. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care, and everybody else watching, do your part. And again, I'm really so thankful for everybody who's tuned in and who's listening and who wants to help, because we really can be the generation that turns everything around. I know it for a fact. We are the generation that's turning this ship around.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cry if I don't get off this Instagram Live. So thank you all. Take care and have a wonderful night.
Bye, everybody.
SunriseMovement.org. SunriseMovement.org. Check it out.
Yep.
All right. That's all. Goodbye.